Good morning. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Press, your host. I'll be with you for the next hour. You're listening to LibertyRadioLive.com. My pleasure to be with you again this morning, and thanks for taking the time to tune in. Now, the book, The Vatican Billions by Avro, Manhattan. Yesterday, before the end of the broadcast, we began chapter 20 of this book, most important book. This chapter is entitled, Why the Catholic Church is the Richest Church in America. We've talking about this period of time shortly after the Second World War, where the Vatican, seeing that Hitler was going to lose the war, that the United States was going to win, decided that possibly Europe might be threatened by a communist expansion into Europe. And as a precautionary measure, she began to hustle out her liquid assets and to deposit them in the United States. The United States, a new country in the world, a youthful nation compared to those older nations in Europe, a country barely over 200 years old. And this Roman Catholic Church, who used to take hundreds of years and millennia to acquire all of her riches, now finds itself a financial colossus and an investor in the United States of America, having changed her tactics, ready to compete with the biggest corporations in the world, raising itself to a controlling financial colossus. Now it says, beginning on the next to the last paragraph on page 151 of the book, if you're following along, it said, how is it then that in so young a country as the United States, born only yesterday, the church has reached the stage where it can beat the great industrial, financial, and oil corporations on their own ground, and indeed at their own game? The answer is twofold. It can be found in the most basic characteristics of the American man. A, energy, initiative, productivity, lack of inhibition, all cemented by the deepest possible concern for material riches and the most idealistic generosity. Two features which seem to have become the hallmark of contemporary Homo Americanus, the American man. And B, atavistic emotionalism and religious naivete. I want to capitalize that one, religious naivete. And where does our naivete come from? Our lack of history. Our lack of history in recognizing what a threat Roman Catholicism is in the world. But we're not limited to just that. The author will define his terms later. It says, B, atavistic emotionalism and religious naivete. All of this has resulted in making Homo Americanus, the American man, a most generous benefactor to his church, and also making him ready to identify himself, his personal, communal success with that of his church. Hence, if he becomes rich, why should not his church partake in his riches? Institutions are the reflections of the type of society which creates and tolerates them. The churches are no exception. Hence, the churches partake of the materialistic idealism of American society, and they are most successful in exploiting with ruthless enthusiasm the elementary emotionalism of the American believer. When to this there is added a large tincture of patriotism, racialism, and clannishness, which the author describes as the chief ingredients of Protestantism, I beg to differ, but then again he says, and yet further, a mysticism, a sense of uniqueness, and the belief that she is the only true church, which are additional ingredients of Catholicism, then the religious naivete of the American believer is exploited to the full, even more thoroughly than an oil well is sucked dry by any successful oil company. This is born out of the concrete, substantial, and fantastic yields of the United States churches. Their business, it seems, is beating big business at its own game. Consider the following. In 1962, the United States Treasury Department showed that churchgoers of America reported on their income tax returns that they had given $2.9 billion to the churches. By 1966, the Protestant churches were themselves reporting $3 billion income annually, as shown in the Yearbook of American Churches. This figure does not include contributions to either the Roman Catholic Church or Jewish communities, neither of which officially report to the American public. Bet you didn't know that, did you? When you see these are figures from the Protestant churches. The Roman Catholic Church doesn't report her financial status in any way in this country. By 1967, annual giving was estimated by the news services in America from unofficially governmental sources as being about $6 billion a year, or $16 million a day. Since then, the figures have climbed ever higher. In which other country has the value of the church's possessions grown to such incredible figures within so short a time? The master in the field, as in so many others, is the Catholic Church. We've already related how back in 1942, Pope Pius XII created the Instituto with the precise objective of sending money abroad. This is the evacuation of the liquid assets of the Roman Catholic Church into victorious United States of America to invest. And it says much of this was placed in the United States. Why did he choose the United States? Not so much because it was geographically safe from the Bolshevik armies or the European red rabbles of the post-World War. Central and South America were equally well placed. Pius sent the Vatican's millions to the United States because the Roman Catholic Church here in the United States was already an economic and political power in her own right, and because enough of her members, lay and ecclesiastic, had infiltrated themselves within the framework of the United States to identify the interests of the Roman Catholic Church with that of the country and vice versa. Apart from the mutual communion of ideological and political interests between the Roman Catholic Church and the United States, which we have treated at length in another book, Catholic Power Today, by the same author, I would just add. I have a copy of the book and I've read it. One of the main reasons why the Vatican chose the United States as her depository and banker was that the Catholic Church there was already a billionaire, and that as much as she commanded sufficient authority in the monetary field to ensure that her interests were properly safeguarded. In other words, the Roman Catholic Church in the United States was very astute at handling money already. Catholic money. It was just a natural fit for the Roman Catholic Church, for the Vatican to send its billions to the United States. Now, the author continues, he says, money is power. And since power can be translated into money, the combination of the two can create a climate for furtherance of the first or of the second, or simultaneously of both. United States Catholicism was in that happy position, so that after the Second World War we saw the spectacle not only of the Vatican siding with the United States, one of the victors, in the creation of a Vatican-Washington axis, an alliance, during the ideological Cold War which followed, despite her consistent support for Hitler during the war, but also in the consolidation of a Washington-Vatican economic front, indeed, a financial partnership. A financial partnership between the Vatican and Washington, our seat of government. Would you ask the question of yourself, where's the separation of church and state in that? Certainly I do. It says the Vatican sent millions to the United States, and the United States lent millions to the Vatican. The transactions at times followed orthodox lines. At others, they did not. Most were camouflaged, as is the Vatican's custom, behind the screen of individuals, banks, and corporations, which served as dummies to save the church from potential embarrassment. At times, deals were carried out above the head of the American administration, and therefore above the heads of the American people, by means of private and secret arrangements between high government officials and the Roman Catholic hierarchy. We shall content ourselves with quoting one example, that concerning the strange case of the Vatican gold. The first news of this celebrated gold sale leaked through a story in the United Nations World Magazine in December of 1952. The article asserted that the Vatican had purchased many millions in gold ingots from the great United States gold supply in the last few years. In Europe, rumor had it that the Vatican was given preferential treatment in these transactions, namely that the Pope was allowed to buy the precious metal at $34 an ounce, $1 below the peg rate of $35 an ounce. The United Nations World Magazine article further declared that the Vatican was heavy with a stock in leading American industries. Several curious Americans thereupon approached the United States Treasury Department as well as the Vatican representative in Washington, Monsignor Amleto Cicognani, for confirmation. Over the signature of A.N. O'Reilly, the United States government officially said that it had sold $26.8 million in gold ingots to the Vatican in a series of transactions. Bishop McShay, for the papal representative, admitted the purchase of gold by the Vatican to the degree of, say, $17 or $18 million, and denied any favoritism in the price. He added that a large number of papal ingots were held. Now get this, a large number of the papal ingots were held in the Federal Reserve vaults in New York. Now I don't want to belabor the point, but it deserves repeating now, and particularly at this point, that the Federal Reserve Bank is a Vatican bank. Our national debt is owed to the Federal Reserve Bank, a Vatican bank. And we learned this from F. Tupper Saucy in his book Rulers of Evil on page 160. The Federal Reserve Bank was owned and controlled by the Rothschild banking dynasty of Europe through private investors. It's not a federal bank. It's owned by European foreign investors, anonymous investors. They are the Rothschild banking dynasty and all of his associates. They are the stockholders of the Federal Reserve Bank. They control it. Now, these Rothschilds are known as the guardians of the Vatican treasury. And it's important to note that the Vatican, when it bought its gold, found the Federal Reserve vaults as a good place to put her gold. Now, continuing with the book, it says the bishop also revealed that the Vatican had, over a given period, sold back about $5 million, making a total net of the sale of $21.8 million. His figures were more accurate than those of the Treasury Department, by the way. But Bishop McShay denied that the Vatican had invested heavily in American industry, and that these investments yielded heavily during the sales booms in the war years. After further inquiries, denials, counter-denials, and odd silences Finally, in a letter of April 1953 issue of the United Nations World Magazine, there came a declaration from the very same Secretary of the Treasury declaring that there was no truth in the suggestion that the gold had been sold at $1 below the peg rate. The case was illuminating because it confirmed, as if there was any need for confirmation, that the Vatican was buying at $1 per ounce below current market price and selling for profit millions of dollars of gold in the United States, and also that it was its practice to do business with the United States government to its own advantage. Further, the news of the deal in question had never been made public. It also appeared that sections of the United States government machine were influenced and controlled by certain American citizens, that is, by Catholics, acting as agents of the Vatican. For example, Bishop McShay, an American citizen who openly admitted when asked how he was so well informed on the gold sale that, quote, he had represented the Vatican at the time of the papal purchase, unquote. You see, a Roman Catholic's first loyalty is to his church, not his country. That's a reality that we have to come to grips with. We have to grasp this. They are a nation within a nation. And I think they're better described as a fifth column. Because when this Roman Catholic nation within a nation turns hostile, or when the Roman Catholic Church decides to take over this country and to make this country Catholic, these people's loyalty is going to be readily apparent. Their loyalty is to their church, and their church is centered in Rome. They're not truly Americans. They're spiritually controlled by a hostile enemy force that claims that by divine right, he should rule the world in Christ's behalf. It's called the New World Order. And every Roman Catholic is pressured on pain of excommunication to use his job, his vocation, in every way possible to better the position of the Roman Catholic Church in this country, to increase its power. And that's what every Roman Catholic does, and that's what this indicates. This sale of gold was managed by Roman Catholics in our own government. Now it says the Vatican's gold purchase just mentioned was one of the many carried out in secret. But the hold of the Vatican upon the financial life of the United States is not confined to sporadic gold purchases. It is effective within a far wider and more comprehensive field, although great efforts are made to see that it remains as secret as possible. The Vatican spokesman, Bishop McShay, denied, for instance, that the Vatican had invested in American industry, yet it was well known that the Vatican had done so, and very heavily at that. The Holy See, in fact, besides being an important shareholder in what now is known as the Bank of America, which has been much in the news lately, another Vatican bank, had invested additional millions with sundry corporations. To quote only two, the American Anaconda Copper Company and Sinclair Oil Company. And this to the tune of about 35 million pounds, or $100 million. About 20 years ago, it was found that in the New York State banking records, the Catholic Church showed investments in stocks and bonds with hundreds of corporations. Among those, these include Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, Rock Island, Erie, Seaboard, Missouri Pacific, Pierre Marquette, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Firestone, Fisk, U.S. American Smelting, Commonwealth Edison, Brooklyn Edison, New York Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, West Penn Power, American Commonwealth Power, Texas Electric, Atlantic City Convention Hall, Louisiana Hotel Company, Squire Building, Lane Bryant, Fox Playhouses, Fox Theater in St. Louis, Denver Joint Stock Land Bank, Savoy Plaza Hotel, National Dairy, Thermoid, Washington Silk, and Pillsbury Flour. Quite a list there, isn't it? And it says, since then, the Catholic Church has managed to penetrate even more deeply within the financial and industrial framework of American society. This she has done to such an extent that at present she is one of the major factors practically within most of the big U.S. corporations, trusts, banks, and industrial giants of America. Because of her successful infiltration and astounding financial power, the Roman Catholic Church, therefore, is de facto one of the most influential presences in the economic activities of the United States, and as a result of the economic well-being of the Western Hemisphere. She's a monster, an economic and corporate monster, and she knows how to protect her assets and to hide her assets from scrutiny by the American people and the American government. She has the use of the American government to increase her wealth in this country, and she doesn't pay taxes. And we're going to continue now in chapter 21 of the book, Member of the Billionaire Club of the United States. Yes, we're using the B word now, Billionaire Club of the United States of America. It says, Roman Catholic Church in the United States is an economic giant. Not so much because she has penetrated within the economic sinews of giant corporations, trusts, and banks of America, but because she has accumulated lands and real estate and controls institutions whose real, solid, and material value in terms of money made of her an economic colossus in her own right. Indeed, perhaps the greatest colossus of all. If the hyperbolic dictum, what is good for General Motors is good for the United States, should be taken with judicious flexibility, the dictum, what is good for the Catholic Church is good for the United States, and vice versa, although never openly stressed at present, is necessarily one of the most concrete realities of the economic and political life of the country. This is not so much because of the financial speculations of the Vatican or because of its sporadic buying and selling of gold ingots on the fluctuating international market, but because the Roman Catholic Church in America has become the largest institutionalized amasser of wealth in the country. For an institution which came on the American continent as poor as the proverbial church mouse, this is not only a grand success story, it is the greatest economic miracle of an age inured with spectacular miracles of all kinds. Miracles are worked by the saints or by God himself. It depends on the degree of your faith, or very often on the amount of silver you put in the collection plate. The Catholic Church worked the American miracle by a masterly combination of the two. Now, continue where we left off. He says, miracles are worked by the saints or by God himself. It depends on the degree of your faith, says the author, or very often on the amount of silver you put in the collection plate. The Roman Catholic Church worked the American miracle by a masterly combination of the two. United States Protestantism has the theological naivete of do-good rural adolescents. Catholicism, the single-track-minded dedication of religious somnambulists. While the former, that is, the Protestant churches, remain a fairly considerable economic power in the land, the latter, the Roman Catholic Church, thanks to the massiveness of her wealth, the purposefulness of its use, the numerical integration of her adherents, and her single-mindedness has become the wealthiest religious system in the world, surpassing even the position of Catholicism in the Middle Ages. Now, we spent a great deal of time in this book studying about the wealth of the Roman Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. Compared to those days, the Roman Catholic Church is much more financially sound than she was then. Hard to imagine, isn't it? Hard to imagine that amassment of wealth, virtually acquired since the signing of the Lateran Treaty in 1929, has outstripped the wealth that she had during the Middle Ages and kept a secret from the American people. How many times in my discussions on amateur radio and in email and telephone and every other means of communication, when I talk about the Roman Catholic Church's power and influence in the country and in the world, and that the Vatican essentially is the head, the top of the New World Order, they say, Tom, the Roman Catholic Church can't have that much influence. It's broke. It doesn't have any money. I mean, when the Jesuits got sued for raping all those little kids, the Jesuit province had to, file bankruptcy. Whole dioceses have filed bankruptcy and the Roman Catholic Church is always out on the street with a cup in her hand, ringing the bell, wanting more money. The Roman Catholic Church is broke, Tom. It's poor. It doesn't have any money. Then I just simply tell them to read The Vatican Billions by Avro Manhattan. And that's when the conversation ends. Americans won't read. So I'm reading the book right here on the air. Continuing now, it says, for whereas in the Middle Ages it took her centuries to become rich, in the United States she has become a billionaire church with the speed, the energy, and the clamor. The boy who from selling newspapers at a street corner becomes the head of a big corporation when still in his 20s. Okay, see the analogy? And it says, how was it done? It was done by the urge to keep the faith intact, by the urge to proselytize, by the urge to become respectable, powerful, and superior, by the belief that being the only true church, it is her mission, her duty, and her obligation to convert the United States into a fief of eternal Rome. Now, certainly that was her goal in the Middle Ages, to make Europe a fief of the Vatican. And what we need to realize, what we must realize, is that the Vatican's goal is to make a fief of the entire world. Fulfilling her role as decreed by the Roman Catholic Church through her canon laws that the Pope is the vicar of Christ, the replacement of the Son of God on earth, and has all the prerogatives of Christ on earth. Thrown upon that the donation of Constantine, the pseudo-Isidorian decretals, and all the precedences set throughout the last millennia and a half, you can come to no other conclusion than the Roman Catholic Church is the head of the New World Order. And the United States is an accessory to that global crime, and we're seeing that in this book. How was it done? How was it done? By the urge to keep the faith intact, by the urge to proselytize, by the urge to become respectable, powerful, and superior, by the belief being the only true church, it is her mission, her duty, and obligation to convert the United States into a fief of eternal Rome. I got to tell you something. The Bible tells me Rome is not eternal. These and other factors have all contributed to from the very beginning to unite the Catholic minorities in racial, ethnic, and religious groups which, no matter how diverse, nevertheless have one common link: their Catholicity. With the result that instead of dispersing their energies, They have united by cementing all their economic and religious forces together. You see, we see all this division among the Protestants. Not so in the Roman Catholic Church. A Catholic is a Catholic no matter what country he comes from. His first loyalty is to Rome, the eternal city. They have a unity, a man-made unity that is not duplicated in the Protestant churches. And that's why they are, quote-unquote, superior, to use her term. But it's not the Church of Jesus Christ. It claims to be, but it's not, as we have well demonstrated so far in this book. Now, the sum of all this diversifying urges, despite the sense of economic and social inferiority which the Catholics experienced within a community of heretics, that's the United States of America, Protestantism, plus the basic fact that the majority of Catholic immigrants were literally the most depressed, illiterate, superstitious, and ignorant sections of the immigrants which Europe sent to North America, tended to give to the immature Catholic community a feeling of unity. This sense of imagined and real affinity gave the separate European immigrating section comfort, protection, self-assurance. Self-assurance. The last quality, once the Catholic immigrants had shot their roots and began to throw out their first branches, turned overtly into aggressiveness. The process is still in evidence now, although it has not yet passed the second generation, and this could not be otherwise since by 1972, half the adult Catholic population in the United States were immigrants or children of immigrants. While it is true that other racial and ethnic groups followed the same process, they lacked the unifying strength which only the Roman Catholic Church can give as a kind of spiritual cement to the most disparate and conflicting interests. Such cement is composed of two main binding ingredients peculiar to itself. A, the protectiveness of a church which is truly universal, and B, the granitic belief that only the Catholic Church is the true church. These ingredients are the most fundamental inner motive force of Catholicism in general and of Catholicism in the United States in particular. When 50 million people hold these views and are manipulated by a hierarchy which is itself directed from Rome, we find a vast, efficient, effervescent, enthusiastic, dynamic Catholic system which stubbornly refuses to be integrated in the non-Catholic community in which it strives, because it is determined to integrate these non-Catholic entities within its own community. This missionary-inspired system is potentially capable of indefinite expansion. Interesting wording, isn't it? Listen, consider the New World Order now. This missionary-inspired system is potentially capable of indefinite expansion. Its basic strategy is not only to keep the Catholics Catholic, but to make Catholics of non-Catholics by existing, by expanding, and by conquering. This must be remembered if we wish to understand one of the most important facets of United States Catholicism, the phenomenal growth of its wealth, since this is the inner drive which has knit the Catholic community in such a powerful religious, political, and economic unit within the United States. This ever-expanding unit has become a self-centered system within the national system. See, it's a nation within a nation. It has become a self-centered system within the national system, at the local, state, and federal level. In other words, every neighborhood is two neighborhoods, one Catholic and one non-Catholic. You need to understand this. We all need to understand this. This ever-expanding unit has become a self-centered system within the national system at the local, state, and federal level, not only in the purely religious field, not only within the cultural field, but equally in the financial sphere. Hence the almost frenzied urge of the Roman Catholic Church in the United States to control her own cultural system. This she does by founding her own schools, superior institutions, and universities. Hence her aggressiveness in the purchasing of real estate, buildings, properties of all kinds. These activities have made the Roman Catholic Church an important and ever-expanding owner of increasingly valuable pieces of property. And since the bulk of the United States Catholicism is urban, and since she has to erect her schools in urban centers, her property there has gone up in value, with the result that in terms of dollars, power, she can become a super millionaire almost without even realizing it. The logical promotion of the strategy which led her to control her own educational system did not end there. It spread of necessity into the medical field. The Catholic Church has her own specific moral and ethical laws, which must not be bypassed or adulterated by a non-Catholic society. In other words, Roman Catholics have their own medical system. Catholic hospitals, Catholic clinics, Catholic treatment centers all over this country because they have their own ethics system. A system that can't be violated by the non-Catholic society in which it dwells. So it's a nation within a nation. Hence, the necessity of running her own health service, her own clinics, hospitals, and the like. Hence the need to buy land and erect buildings for that purpose. Hence her finding herself in due course a multi-millionaire also in the world of medical care. You ever wonder how much influence this uniquely Catholic medical institution has on our government's health care policies? You better think about it. You better think long and hard about it. And think about it well enough that you know who to vote for and who not to vote for when it comes time to discuss this national health care policy. They call it universal health care. What do we know about the word universal? Universal and Catholic are interchangeable words. You can use the word universal when you mean Catholic, and you can use the word Catholic when you mean universal. It's a correctly named system. Universal health care. It's a Catholic health care system. It's going to use Catholic morals. It's going to be bound upon Roman Catholic canon law, which can be changed by the Pope anytime he wants. He regards himself as the supreme lawgiver of the universe. And that's what he is to the Roman Catholic in this country. Continuing, it says, but then since we live in an age of mass media, the Vatican had also to control or at least have a say in these as well. And so her exertions were directed in that field with great success. The Roman Catholic Church controls the press in this country, is what this author is telling us. It says, and since a colossal education and medical system needs money, it became necessary to find funds somewhere, besides the contributions of the faithful themselves. Where do you suppose Rome gets the necessary money? Yours and my tax dollars. That's right, tax dollars to support the Roman Catholic Church, the fifth column, the nation within a nation. What do you think about your Protestant tax dollars going to support your own executioner, your own inquisitor? Continuing, it says, and so commercial associations were readily established with the world of business. Shares were bought in prosperous units. Land speculation proved remarkably profitable. Commercial enterprises were owned directly and indirectly by the Catholic Church, with the result that soon she found herself a multi-millionaire in this field as well. The numerous dioceses and parishes, the local bishops and cardinals, also joined in these schemes of ownership, and all kinds of projects and enterprises raised funds which were invested and made to yield profits which amounted to millions. In this sector also, then, the Roman Catholic Church in America found herself a multi-millionaire. Yet while accumulating hundreds of millions of dollars in this way, and while benefiting from the administration of local, state, and federal non-Catholic governments, the Catholic Church, unlike all the other multi-million-dollar enterprises of the United States, apart from the Protestant Church, did not pay 1 cent in taxation, so that while her competitors in the business and financial fields had to pay taxes, the Catholic Church was exempt from paying anything at all. This gave her an enormous advantage over her commercial competitors, so that her millions would have multiplied in her coffers even if she had remained inactive. But she did not remain inactive. She plunged with immense enthusiasm into the exclusive pool of the multi-millionaire enterprises, determined to make her millions grow by hook or by crook. There's another veiled reference to the papacy. Without the burden of taxation, the task became even easier, particularly when one remembers that tax was being paid by non-Catholics to support her tax-free enterprises throughout the United States. Let me read that again. Here's your Protestant dollars being used to support Roman Catholic interests. It says, without the burden of taxation, the task became even easier, particularly when one remembers that tax was being paid by non-Catholics to support her tax-free enterprises throughout the United States. The result was that in no time she crashed into an even more exclusive club, that of the billionaires, where only the towering giants of U.S. industry and finance are admitted. Having been herself a member, since she had all the qualifications, she then proceeded to make the other members of the club members of herself. That is, she promoted a campaign to make the billionaire club join the Roman Catholic Church. Now you know why so many mega millionaires are members of the Roman Catholic Church. She proselytizes them. She works hard at it. She knows she has financial benefit to gain by digging into those billionaires' pockets and making them Catholics, making them confess all their sins to a priest, and paying for their absolution. History's repeating itself. Rome never changes. Continuing now, it says, this she did via 3 basic methods. A, by constant, subtle manipulation of the religious alliance of individual Catholic members of the giant corporations, for example, Henry Ford. B, by business penetration in her own right as a partner within the business framework of the giant corporations through the buying of shares and the like in the business circles of the billionaire fraternity. And C, by identifying the overall interests of the giant corporations with her own, particularly in the fields seemingly alien to business but fundamentally closely interrelated with economic prosperity, namely the political and ideological ones. Who's most concerned about the ways of politics? Corporations, always looking for an advantage. So Rome has interjected herself into politics. And she benefits. Rome benefits. When the corporations benefit from tax loopholes passed by the government, the Roman Catholic Church benefits. It's quite a racket, isn't it? It's complex. And you don't hear any of this stuff in the mainstream or alternative medias. You wonder why the Roman Catholic Church is so powerful in our government. This is why. They control the money. They control the politicians. They control the corporations. They control the politicians. They control the politicians. They control the corporations. It's a circle. And you're not included. You're a taxpayer. Most likely a non-Catholic. Most likely a servant, a thief of this magnificent financial colossus called the Roman Catholic Church. You're a slave to her. Whether you agree or not, you're a slave to her. She owns the country. She owns Washington, D.C. You pay taxes? Who does it benefit? Continuing, it says the total result of this triple connection with the giants of the United States, financial, industry, and trusts, is a mutual magnitudinous identification of interests. That is, while the extremely wealthy Roman Catholic Church identifies herself with the profits and potential expansion of the giant corporations, they in turn identify themselves with the religious, social, and political power of the Roman Catholic Church in American society. One trivial, although typical aspect of such mutual help is demonstrated by the fact that any giant corporation of the United States can deduct 5% of taxable income for contribution to the churches. Many churches, but above all the Roman Catholic Church, have fully exploited this little-known clause, with the result that the greater part of the giant corporations of the United States have given the 5% to the Roman Catholic Church. If one looks at the profits of, say, General Motors, IBM, Standard Oil, and so on, one can see that the vast sums have been received from the corporations, and as thanks for the favors received, the Roman Catholic Church invests as many millions as she can with these same corporations. This mutual amalgamation of interests is promoted not only within the geographical borders of the United States, but outside as well, since both partners, their business and financial feet firmly planted on the United States soil, are simultaneously international entities through the mere nature of their activities. Do you know when a Roman Catholic invested corporation leaves this country and goes to some place like India where the wages are cheap, the corporations make multitudes more income? What incentive does the Roman Catholic Church have to keep those corporations that she controls in this country? None. She's redistributing your wealth through the export of our businesses. Talk about it more tomorrow on Inquisition Update. Thanks for listening.